Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes. Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Great. I'll make a motion to seal the closed session minutes of the October 14, 2020 meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke, Mrs. Capwell. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Rebecca?
Rebecca, you're muted.
I muted, but it's it just muted, so I'm gonna call in rather than do because this entire time it's frozen. Thanks.
I guess that was a yes. Fortunately, we have some shortened verbiage for
Say yes
tonight. I
because I didn't hear what was asked.
The question was, the motion was to seal the closed session minutes. Anyway, I would like to remind the audience that we are holding this meeting pursuant to the governor's executive order and allowing public bodies to convene virtually for the purpose of conducting essential business. In accordance with that order, the committee's meeting tonight is for the purpose of conducting essential business only, and for this reason, the meeting will not include a public comment period. I would ask all of you to join me in a moment of silence and to keep in mind all those families who are suffering from this COVID-19 pandemic. And so we keep their families in our thoughts. Thank you. I recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. McGee, why don't you give us the roll call for attendance sake?
Chairman Bourget,
Here.
Vice Chair Burke,
Here.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Here.
Mrs. Capwell.
Rebecca, I think you're frozen and muted.
Here.
Thank you. Next, we'll go into recognitions and announcements. Dr. McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Woonsocket Education Department, in collaboration with Sodexo Food Services, announces free meals which will be offered to all students for the weekends. This is in addition to free curbside grab-and-go meals that are offered to all of our students Mondays through Fridays. Starting on Monday, October 19th, breakfast, lunch, snack, and dinner will be offered to all Woonsocket Education Department students at no cost. That includes our virtual students. They may come to our many curbside locations. On Fridays, families can pick up meals for Saturday and Sunday. And just a reminder of the grab-and-go meals, their locations, again, Monday through Friday from 11 to 1 p.m. at Hamlet Middle School, Woonsocket High School, Citizens Elementary, Coleman, Vernon Heights, Harris, Savoy, and Globe Park Elementary Schools, respectively. The 2020 fall cycle of the 21st Century After-School programs at Woonsocket High School began virtually beginning the week of October 5th. We encourage all students to get involved in one or more after-school programs this fall so that they have the opportunity to pursue interests they may have, explore a new hobby, or spend time with new friends virtually at this time. Recently, registration booklets were posted and an email blast with a link to an electronic registration form went out. In addition, this information can be completed and returned online. Please contact Ms. Chris Wright, who's the site coordinator of the 21st Century Community Learning Center, for more information on the programs at Woonsocket High School. She can be reached at 401-767-4731. In addition to the Woonsocket High School programs, there are many, many other programs offered to students at both the middle and elementary levels, as well as many programs for parents. For general information on all Connecting for Children and Families programs and services, please call 401-766-3384. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Thank you, Dr. McGee. I'll make a motion to place on file the recognitions and announcements. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Kepiscus. Roll call, Dr. McGee.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into the approval of minutes. First, I'll make a motion to approve the September 16th, 2020 special open session minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kepiscus. Any corrections, deletions, additions? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the September 23rd, 2020 open session minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to approve the October 7th, 2020 special open session minutes. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kepiscus. Any changes, corrections? Hearing none. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Does any member of the school committee want to take any item out of place or want to discuss any items within the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Perrier?
I'd like to add 2 requisitions onto the purchases this evening. Resolution 211035 to Industrial Burner Service. That's going to be for the installation of a new boiler. It is $248,000, $248,376. And then I'd also like to add another requisition, 211036, also to Industrial Burner Service in the amount of $62,850. And that is for a rental of a portable boiler.
And this is for the high school. Is that correct?
Correct.
These both are for the high school. I'll make a motion to amend the purchases within the consent agenda to add those 2 items. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Is there any discussion on the amendment? On the amendment, Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Are there any other items in the consent agenda that we need amendments that we'd like to amend or change? If not, on the amended consent agenda, Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Thank you. There are no communications. Dr. McGee, would you give us your report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to just update the school committee on our Phase 2 reopening of our grades in the Woonsocket Education Department, as well as some information on the Woonsocket Area Career and Technical Center reopening plan, as well as sharing just some overall data with you from across the district, throughout the district over the past few weeks. So as you know, we entered Phase 3 of our reopening on October 13th. Phase 3 included grades 4, 5, 7, and 8 returning on a hybrid schedule, which includes Mondays being a distance learning day, students whose last name begins with the letters A through L attending in person on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and students whose last name begins with the letters M through Z attending in person on Wednesdays and Fridays. The information that I've received from having some conversations with staff across the district is that so far we're just a few days in, but the feedback that I've received has been positive. We're gradually bringing more students back into our classrooms, albeit on a hybrid model, but still bringing more students back. We're seeing that it's working out pretty well. So I'm very pleased about the fact that we've gotten to phase 3. As I've stated before, we've veered a little bit from the initial plan. However, I think we've been very successful in moving slowly and, returning students back in small groups versus returning everyone back together. I'd also like to talk briefly about the Career Center. Last night, the leadership at Woonsocket High School and the Career Center had a Google Meet with parents of Career Center students. They started at 6 p.m. with the parents and seniors as well were in attendance last evening at 6 o'clock, and they talked about the plan, bringing the seniors back first, and then at 7 o'clock, the parents and families of our underclassmen had a Google Meet with the leadership team as well to talk about the reopening, the gradual reopening of the Career Center. So let me just explain to you what it's going to look like. So I want to again reiterate that we're talking about just the Woonsocket Area Career and Technical Center students. We're not talking about students that are not in any of the programs at the Career Center. So again, it's limited to those students, and there's roughly 650, 700 students who potentially will be returning to the Career Center and the high school in a hybrid model. Let me just again explain to you what that process is going to look like. On 10/15, which is next Tuesday, our seniors will return in a hybrid fashion. Again, they're not all going to necessarily return. We're hoping as many as possible will choose to return. I know that Mr. Gio and his leadership team are in the process, or they might have already sent out a survey to our Career Center families, asking them to let them know whether they intend for their son or daughter to return to the hybrid model. But anyway, regardless, seniors are scheduled to return on the 15th. Juniors are scheduled to return on 10/22. And on October 29th, our sophomores are scheduled to return to the Career Center. All of the programs will be returning in that hybrid model. The way the schedule is going to look is as I said, it's going to be a hybrid, which is going to mirror what our other grades are currently in their hybrid model. Mondays will be a virtual day for those Career Center students. Tuesdays and Thursdays, students with the last name beginning with the letters A through L and will be in person. And on Wednesdays and Fridays, students with their last name beginning with the letters M through Z will be in person. Let me go through what the day is going to look like. So for example, as we're going to be starting with the seniors on 10/15, where the high school and the Career Center are combining two of the programs together, so that they're creating those common pods. So let me sort of go through it by program. So the auto and the construction programs will be combined, not in their lab work or the actual hands-on work. But there will be times where those groups will be together in a reserve room where they will be getting their instruction from the core classes virtually. So our seniors, periods 3 and 4, they will be in their lab groups. So all of the auto and all of the construction students will be separated with their Career Center teachers, and they will be, learning the hands-on Career Center information and programming. Periods 1 and 2, 5, 6, and 7, they will be virtual, but they'll be in those pods where they'll be receiving the instruction from the other classes that they're taking beyond the classes from the Career Center. Culinary and hospitality will be combined as well when they're in their reserve room. Again, the reserve room simply means that they're receiving the online instruction at school in a location that's large enough for them to socially distance. And again, we're talking about a hybrid model here, so not all of the students will be together at the same time. We're also combining health careers and child studies, digital media and graphics, and biotech and computer science will be separate from one another. So again, we're starting with the seniors returning on 10/15. If things go as planned, the juniors will return, as I said, on the 22nd, and their schedule will look a little bit different than the seniors. They will actually be receiving their career and tech instruction periods 1 and 2. And then finally, the sophomores will be returning on the 29th, and periods 6 and 7 is when they'll be receiving their career and tech instruction. So again, I want to thank the high school administration and the Career Center administration on putting together, I think is a very well thought out plan. I know that there has been some collaboration between the high school and other career and technical centers throughout the state of Rhode Island, and many of them are using a similar model, a hybrid model, and many of them are bringing back classes, one at a time. They're staggering their return to make sure, as we've done with our other grades, to make sure we get it right. We don't want to just bring everybody back at the same time. So I want to thank them for the work that they've put into this. As I said, there was a Google Meet last night. My understanding in speaking with Mr. Gio and Mr. Webb and Mrs. Caparelli and Mr. Lamoureux, that it was very well attended by not only parents but students, and very, very pleased that we can provide the level of communication to our families so that they know what's happening and that they can be a part of the process as we put these plans together. Lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about data that we've been compiling across the district. I'm going to start with the elementary grades. To date, we have approximately 747 students in grades pre-K through 5 who have opted for distance learning. That's approximately 30% of our elementary enrolled students. With respect to the number of teachers that we have at each of the grade levels, again, K through 5, who are teaching virtually, we have approximately 5 teachers per grade level that are teaching students virtually. Our middle schools, as I stated a few minutes ago, in the beginning of phase 3, have brought back grade 7 and grade 8 in a hybrid model. So at Villanova Middle School, we have approximately 168 students on Tuesdays and Thursdays that are in a hybrid fashion, and we have 155 that are in on Wednesdays and Fridays. There are approximately 342 Villanova Middle School students in grades 6 through 8 who are learning virtually. At Hamlet Middle School, the numbers are very similar. We have 166 students that are in hybrid Tuesdays and Thursdays, 162 that are hybrid on Wednesdays and Fridays, and approximately 300 students who are learning virtually. And again, that's grades 6, 7, and 8. So that, coupled with the fact that our high school, our career center, I should say, will be starting their blended approach next Tuesday with our seniors. So I'm sure that the next time we meet, I'll have some information with respect to our career center and how that reopening phased in process is going. With that, Mr. Chairman and members of the school committee, if you have any questions, I would be happy to try to answer them.
Just a couple of items, Dr. McGee. When we had originally talked about bringing back the Career Center, it seemed like we were thinking about busing the students in, doing the hands-on work, and then bringing them home. It sounds like this is a much better plan, that if they come to school, they're going to be there all day.
They will. There are 2 days where they'll be dismissed early, and that is the way the schedule is going to work. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, students with, again, their last name A through L, they're going to have on Tuesdays period after they have their Career Center hands-on a block. They're going to go to periods 1, 3, 5, and 7. And on Thursdays, they're going to be going to periods 2, 4, 6, and then they're going to be dismissed. So Thursdays and Fridays, those students will be dismissed at 12:20, right after lunch, which will give them enough time once they get home to partake in their advisory, which is last period of the day. So on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they will be there all day, and on Thursdays and Fridays, and again, it's equitable because Thursdays and Fridays you have half the alphabet on each day. They'll be dismissed at 12:20.
And we've got, and when they're together in their rooms, and their reserve rooms, there's enough room to keep, like you said, for social distancing. So you're going to have no more than 15 in a class. Is that what's happening?
That's the plan. I know that Mr. Gio sent out and his team sent out the survey. I believe it was today. If not today, I know it's going out tomorrow. That's going to give them a sense of the location of those rooms, so that we ensure that there's enough space for our students to socially distance. So to answer your question, yes, we will.
Okay. And the last thing I have is, could you tell us a little bit about the actual infections that we've had, COVID infection rates?
Yes. Yep.
What have been the cases that we've noted from pre-K to 12?
So thus
pre-K
far,
to 8. Pre-K to 8.
It's been, knock on wood, it's been very good so far. And so with the cases that we've had of students who are either in person, full-time, or in person, part-time with a hybrid, we've had a total of 3 cases, a pre-K, a K, and a grade 1. And the pre-K class had to quarantine for 1 week. That was about a week and a half ago. So they've since returned. The kindergarten class and the first grade class are the most recent, and they have had to quarantine. They're still quarantining. They had to quarantine for 14 days. So beyond that, we have had some positive cases of students, but they've been virtual students.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have any questions, comments for Dr. McGee on his report?
Mr. Chairman,
Vice Chair Burke.
first of all, Dr. McGee, I don't know if you were misspeaking, but 10:15 is tomorrow.
You know what? I think I did misspeak. It's
I
next
think you mean
Tuesday. I
next week.
apologize.
10:22.
You're right. It is tomorrow.
So 10:22 for the seniors, 10:29 for the juniors.
Yes.
Okay.
In November.
Yeah. And 11/4. The sophomores are going to be 11/4 because Tuesday is election day.
Okay. Well, just to clarify for yourself there when you present it.
You're right. I had it on 2 different sheets of paper, and the one that I read off of was an old one. So you're correct. So yes. Let me reiterate that then, Mr. Burke. So next Tuesday are our seniors, and then the 27th would be the juniors, and 11/4 are going to be the sophomores. Yeah,
Okay.
thank you for reminding me.
There might have been some shock of them thinking they got to go tomorrow.
I think there would have been a lot of shock.
I
To
do
Mr.
like.
Gio, I think in addition.
I I do like the phase out approach. I think that's the best thing for us to get a good handle on it. My only concern is several weeks ago, when the high school originally proposed their return to school, they talked about putting the students in one classroom, maybe 15 kids, and they would be on virtual learning, going through their own individual classes. All right. Now we seem to be doing the same thing, though maybe half and half virtual in the same classroom all day, and then the 2 periods at the Career Center. When we originally talked about it, we saw that there could be some difficulties keeping the kids sitting in the same room, for several periods. In fact, we even said for some of them, why would they even bother to come in? They can do the virtual at home. I understand now there are these 2 other periods throughout the day with their Career Center. I just would ask, though, as we bring out this approach, that the teachers who will be in those rooms, really notice to see if that works. Because if it's too chaotic, if it's too noisy, if it's too, I kept thinking of a children's book I remember once reading about everybody talking differently in one room. And I'm not talking about the Tower of Babel here, but
Pretty close.
Pretty close, though. Everyone talking differently in the same room. It could be an issue. Now, we could try it. I'm all for trying something to see if it works and to make it work. But I really think that we have to examine the ramifications and what does happen. And that's my thought on this particular thing. So,
I think you're right. I think what we'll have is we'll have a week to sort of iron out some of those wrinkles if there are any wrinkles like that. So it'll give us an opportunity. It'll give the high school and the Career Center an opportunity to, as the next group is phased in, to make any modifications that they feel as though they may need to make.
Let me piggyback on Vice Chair Burke's thought. When we originally thought of having the students spend most of the day virtually, and we killed that idea, why do you think it's going to work now? Why would it work now?
I think it's really the only way for us to get them back right now to their hands-on classes. One of the things that we want to try to avoid, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Gio, but one of the things that we want to try to avoid is having students, moving around the building in various locations, going to various classrooms at the same time. So this is an opportunity for those pods to stay together. The one difference between the recommendation early and this one is early on, you could have had, of a classroom of say 20 or so, you could have, 90% of that class going to different locations, and the bulk of that class really, they're not really together except for that one particular class. In this situation, we have students who are members of specific programs who are together at least for that block during those 2 days during the week. And I think it's just it's more of a cohesive group, if you will, that stays together the other periods of the day when they're receiving the virtual instruction from their other core classes and their electives.
Okay. Have we made any inroads into getting subs? And are we any closer to opening the high school?
I know that the leadership team at the high school has been interviewing substitutes, and I believe that there are about 5, possibly 6, who have been, sent along to the Human Resources Department for the next step in the process, which is, ensuring that they have an up-to-date BCI and just completing the necessary paperwork to start, working in the district. We also, as I stated at the last meeting, we've submitted our application for the grant, which would provide us with, over $100 per day for the
Right.
substitutes. And I know that RIDE, in fact, I just got an email today from RIDE that they've been working hard with the Highlander Institute to procure a certain number of substitutes. And I just received another email from RIDE late this afternoon, a survey where they want superintendents to provide them with a number of substitutes that we would need, and some specific areas of certification that we would need them to have. So I'm going to be sending that out in the morning to the deputy commissioner, and hopefully, between the 5, hopefully 6 substitutes that have been interviewed and are going to get their paperwork in, couple that with the survey that RIDE has sent out, that we'll start to get, we'll start to fill that gap sooner rather than later. I hesitate to say, by a certain date, we'll definitely be ready to bring back our freshmen. But I can tell you that, we're still working hard to have, adults in front of students, so that as soon as we possibly can bring them back, we'll bring them back. But we're kind of waiting on 2 variables, and that's RIDE getting us the Highlander substitutes. I can tell you that I've had numerous conversations with RIDE. I've had numerous conversations with both commissioners, deputy commissioners at RIDE. They know that we have a great need in the state, and I really believe that we're at the top of the list when it comes to them, providing us with substitutes. So I'm pretty confident that they're going to find us some, in addition to the ones that we apparently have now, who, once we establish what classrooms they can sub in, we'll pull the trigger as soon as we can.
Okay. Does any member have any other comments, questions for Dr. McGee? Mrs. Kepiscus, Mrs. Capwell, Vice Chair Burke?
I'm good.
Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the superintendent's report. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
yes,
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into the school committee, school subcommittee reports. First, we'll start with the policy update. I'll turn it over to you, Mrs. Kepiscus, and Vice Chair Burke.
may I, Mr. Burke?
Please, by all means.
Thank you. The policy subcommittee last met on October 8th. We convened our meeting at 4 p.m. We discussed 4 policies and sent 3 through to the full committee. The first is virtual learning policy. I want to clarify that's virtual learning as opposed to distance learning. And the way that I explain that is virtual learning is when you're at the high school and you want to take a class we don't offer, like say Mandarin or German. You can take it virtually through a virtual high school. The state requires each district to have a policy. With no discussion, this policy was passed to move to the full school committee. It is on our agenda tonight for first passage. We also passed a COVID-19 policy onto the school committee. It's a more general policy. There were some questions raised by Mr. Burke, and that this new policy authorizes the superintendent to waive some other policies due to unforeseen circumstances as relate to COVID-19. For example, there were 2 examples provided. One was by Mrs. Codier with regard to the power outage that we had suffered on October 8th. And another was provided by Dr. Holt with regard to the use of a progress note as opposed to a report card at the elementary schools in the spring. Those are the type of allowances that are given to the superintendent. Without any further discussion, the subcommittee decided to move this policy along to the full school committee. It is on our agenda tonight for first passage. The third was quite simple. It was an acquisition and updating of the acquisition and updating of technology policy. It was mandated mainly because of the change of Mr. Notariani's title from Chief Technology Officer to Chief Operations Officer. It's intended to formalize our policy with regard to the purchase of technology so that a teacher can't set up, for example, a GoFundMe to purchase their own technology, because all technology must be vetted first through Dr. Holt or Superviso and the building principal, with Mr. Notariani having final say. Without further discussion, the policy was moved forward to the full school committee for first passage and is on our agenda tonight. The last policy we looked at was a written information security program that's proposed by the trust, which provides our insurance, and it is intended to address cybersecurity and information security, that is the physical lockdown of confidential information. That policy was not in its final form, but was just brought forth for us to be able to review it and to be aware that the trust is requiring these policies. This is the physical nature, and eventually we'll be addressing the electronic nature, that all such information must be kept secured at all times. There was a question by Mr. Burke with regard to another policy we have, which allows the release of information to third parties with parental consent, such as release to recruiters for the military. And it was explained to us that this is different. This is more to address the area of a breach, for example, as opposed to a willing or a voluntary release of information. This policy still has to be refined and reviewed by our legal department, and therefore it is not on your agenda tonight. There was mention by Dr. McGee of tweaking, as he referred to it, the non-union employee benefits policy. After discussion with legal, a decision was made that that would come off the subcommittee agenda, policy subcommittee agenda. It would be on the closed session agenda for the full school committee, most likely at our next meeting. Our next policy subcommittee meeting will be on Thursday, October 22nd at 4 p.m. and will be done virtually unless otherwise directed. Our meeting adjourned at 4:25 p.m. and that concludes my report.
Vice Chair Burke, would you like to add anything to Mrs. Kepiscus' report?
No, Ms. Kepiscus has covered it all.
Covered it all, as usual. Great job. Mrs. Capwell, do you have any comments for Mrs. Kepiscus or Vice Chair Burke?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the policy update. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second with Vice Chair Burke and Mrs. Capwell. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into the curriculum subcommittee update. Mrs. Kepiscus, would you lead the way?
I will. This, again, the curriculum subcommittee convened today, November 14th at 1 p.m. I was late to this meeting. I did not arrive until 1:09 because I was tied up with a work appointment that went a lot longer than I expected, and I apologize to the subcommittee and to the full committee for that. When I joined the meeting, we were discussing how the roll-in of the hybrid plan had gone in the elementary schools. Ms. Moniz was speaking that they were able to accommodate all the families who wanted to return to in-person learning, although there was some shifting with regard to perhaps the alphabet in order to try to balance those rooms. Mr. Bourget indicated he received some feedback about children joining virtual classes to which teachers never showed up. Dr. McGee said they were aware of that, they're working on that, and sometimes that happened, per Dr. Holt, that students were put in one cohort and then because of their shifting moved to another cohort and never really told to move to that new cohort, so they showed up in the old cohort where there was no teacher. And they're doing their best to resolve that. The administrators have a spreadsheet to enter all the virtual classrooms to make sure that is not happening any longer. And if so, that the problems are being addressed. We then moved on to the middle school, and Mrs. Granado and Ms. Renegaldo expressed essentially the same information that Dr. McGee gave us in his report with regard to the students. They advised that there had been very specific protocols developed with regard to how students enter and move through the building. In fact, they created this great video that they shared with all of us this afternoon, talking about which staircase you use, how you walk in the hallways, how you have to wear your mask, no high fives, things like that. It was actually, I thought, very well done. And they said they're, of course, still working out kinks, but things went smoothly. Ms. Granado indicated that 2 days in, they've had to send 3 kids home with symptoms. Ms. Renegaldo indicated 2 days in, she's had to send 2 kids home with symptoms and obviously awaiting test results. One of the big issues they've encountered so far was around lunches and lunches arriving late. They've added a second cart to help deal with that. There haven't been any mask issues, but we're only 2 days in. They both indicated that the special ed classrooms, the self-contained classrooms that have been in since day one, have been going great, and attendance has been very good. And Ms. Moniz added the same was true of the elementary schools. With regard to the high school, Mr. Gio advised that things had gone smoothly with the small population of self-contained students at the high school as well. He discussed the exact same information that Dr. McGee just provided with regard to the roll-in at the book program. And he discussed the issue of the surveys going out to make a determination as to what the numbers were going to be and whether or not we would have sufficient staffing. He explained how the reserve rooms were going to work. I think we've gone over that pretty much to death. And we clarified that this was essentially a voc school initiative at this point. It was not spreading to the high school at this point because we still have staffing issues we're trying to address. And the focus with regard to all of this is the 2 magic words: everything's fluid, and we have to be ready to pivot at any time. And Dr. McGee reminded everyone, and Mr. Gio agreed, that this has all been a logistical nightmare, and that everyone has done their very best to try to schedule students for both in-person and distance learning. Neither one is easy. We all thanked everyone who done a tremendous amount of work to get this up and running. Plans remain fluid. The need to pivot means more work needs to be done every day. And he thanked everyone for, Chair Bourget thanked everyone for a great job and asked them to keep it up. The next meeting is on November 10th, 2020 at 1 p.m. and our meeting adjourned at 1:42.
Wow, thank you, Mrs. Kepiscus. I feel like I've relived the entire meeting.
I'm sorry,
Great job.
I tried to pare them down as much as I
You
could.
did a great job. Any comments for, thoughts for Mrs. Kepiscus? Dr. McGee, roll call. I'll make a motion, I'm sorry, I'll make a motion, receive and place on file the curriculum update. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke.
Chairman
Dr.
Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go to the Technology Subcommittee update. I'll turn it over to Mrs. Capwell and Vice Chair Burke.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Vice Chair Burke, are you good with me taking it away?
Please do.
Excellent. So the Technology Subcommittee met at 6 p.m. on September 29th. All in all, it was just good news and positive updates, again, all around. We kicked off the meeting talking about the status of technology work orders. Al shared with the subcommittee that they had come down from being at over 500 open orders to a total of 41 open work orders. So a job well done. Mr. Notoriani ensured to let the committee know that this success was largely in part to the efforts of Jeff Barrows. And so we pass along our thanks again to that tremendous effort by Mr. Barrows. We moved on to equipment. Al gave an update that we were in the process of fulfilling hotspots where needed throughout the community so that the individuals that were lacking in Wi-Fi were able to have access. And then talked about the open Chromebook orders. So the committee had approved and the technology team had placed 2 orders to fulfill open orders that were needed for Chromebooks, as well as a buffer that would allow us to have Chromebooks on hand should we incur breakage and just general needs to replace. At the time we had our meeting on 9/29, those orders were expected to come in within a week. So Al, correct me if I'm wrong, but those should be in hand as of today.
Yes.
Excellent. The last time the committee met, meaning the school committee, and we talked about technology, we discussed openly that the Google platform was experiencing difficulties, and in order to ensure that our teachers have the appropriate tools to teach. We were going down potentially two different paths, and again, that was based on whether or not Google would be able to rectify some of the issues and challenges it was experiencing within their platform. They did make progress on that, and therefore our technology department was able to place the order for supplemental equipment for the teachers, that being iPads, Apple Pencils, cases with keyboards, as well as cameras and tripods, in order to supplement and enhance the tools that they have at their disposal today in the classroom. So again, it was good news all around. We did make a plan to meet again on 10/27, and that is what I have in my notes. Vice Chair Burke, Mr. Notoriani, if you have anything else to add, please do so.
I do not.
Neither do I.
You covered it all.
Excellent.
Great job.
Lovely.
Good job.
I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the technology update. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to the financial update. I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Perrier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This evening, I'll be presenting the June 2020 preliminary fiscal update to the school committee. We'll start off with the financial highlights. $384,000 has been lost in total state aid for fiscal year 20 due to the state aid reduction in the month of June. CARES Act ESSER funds were used by the state to backfill the entire 2020 state aid contribution. However, the federal dollars that were utilized to backfill the lost state aid needed to be shared with private schools, as they were eligible to receive a portion of these funds. As it stands, those ESSER funds have been rolled into the state aid total for the year as a part of the general fund. It is undetermined at this time if we will need to track these additional federal dollars in a fund outside of the general fund. If we do, general fund expenditures will be moved to that fund as well, causing no change to the bottom line. And finally, Medicaid revenues have been stronger than anticipated this year, and we are currently looking at a $442,000 surplus on that line. As for the expenditures, all regular salaries are projected to be $1.14 million under budget at this time. When netted with the $836,000 employee turnover allowance, the district is $304,000 under budget for salaries across the board. Due to school being fully virtual, we had significant savings to close the year in substitute salaries. We're currently finishing below a little under $296,000 below budget. Medical expenses also came in under budget by $1.76 million. Both medical and dental expenses have been significantly decreasing since COVID-19 began. And I would anticipate an uptick to continue once the elective surgeries have resumed. Looking over the last couple of weeks, this is a fiscal year 20 update, but looking over the last couple of weeks in this fiscal year, we are seeing a return to a more normal weekly bill for us from Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I think we're starting to get back there in terms of medical expenses, but this is something that we'll continue to track as we go through the current fiscal year. Also, transportation was $994,000 under budget. This, of course, was due to us stopping all transportation payments once the COVID-19 school shutdown in March began. That led to the rather large surplus on this line. Also, all out-of-district tuitions came in $242,000 over budget, which is pretty close to the budget for the entire year. I believe it's only a little over 2% in total, or the entire budget line across all out-of-district tuitions. So that came in pretty accurately. And then finally, we still are getting some invoices in at the last minute that go back to fiscal year 20. We've closed out purchase orders at this point. We've also made all of our accruals for payroll. So I feel pretty confident right now that we've pretty much wrapped up and we're audit ready as of June 30th, 20th this time. I'll take any questions for the school committee right now at this time.
Mr. Perrier, I think we discussed this at the finance committee meeting, where you said we're audit ready, but we still, before we finalize the audit, we're awaiting for final resolutions from the state, aren't we? To see
Yes,
where
that,
we stand. And so it's very
yeah,
difficult now to bring in the auditors because our final numbers could change in terms of how we deal with reserves, how we deal with, that we have on our balance sheet. I would think that there may be some other accounts and there may be some other expenditures that have to be transferred out or transferred in. So I think right now we have to wait until the governor gives us an indication what our state aid's going to be before we can have the auditors come in.
yeah. Once we, get the final numbers, we'll be able to move forward from there. So,
Now, tonight, I noticed on our agenda, we want to make some transfers out of our general fund into different funds, don't we?
that is
So
correct, Mr. Chairman.
we'll talk about that once we get there, but I mean, that is going to be really protecting our preliminary estimated surpluses that would be used for some of the expenditures that could be coming down the pike.
And just for everyone's note, that those were accounted for in this fiscal update. Those transfers were already accounted for here. So it's nothing new. It's already been rolled into this fiscal update.
It just needs our approval.
Correct.
Okay. Any comments, questions for Mr. Perry and his financial update? Then I'll make a motion to receive and place on file the financial update. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into unfinished business. The first item is I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the digital citizenship policy for second passage. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke.
And
Any
Mrs.
additional
Capwell.
discussion? Any additional discussion on this item? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
The second item that we have in unfinished business, we were to have a vote on memorandum of agreement regarding the part-time custodial maintenance employees to assist with cleaning due to COVID-19. But as I understand, the union is still working through this memorandum of agreement. And so I'll make a motion to table the vote until our next meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kepiscus. Any discussion on the table? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, in unfinished business, is my understanding that the members of Union 1137 have voted and approved the memorandum of agreement regarding double time during states of emergency. And so, is there any discussion on this before we vote? Then I'll call on the vote. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Does this have to be, I forgot the word.
Motion?
Motion, yeah.
Oh, no, we go right into the vote.
You go right into the vote? Okay.
Yes.
Okay,
Vice
yeah.
Chair Burke,
Yes. Okay.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, we'll go into new business. I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the workforce reduction of local 1137 employees. And since I'll make that motion for discussion only. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second for discussion. Since the union members have agreed to the memorandum of agreement, I will not approve the workforce reduction for local 1137 employees. Is there any other discussion about this?
Nope.
Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
No.
Vice Chair Burke,
No.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
No.
Mrs. Capwell.
No.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the fiscal 20 transfers that Mr. Perrier was discussing in his financial update. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kepiscus. Mr. Perrier, would you go over these two adjustments and what's their impact? What are we looking at?
So in front of the school committee this evening, we have two adjustments, two balance transfers into one going to our technology capital fund and the other going into our building capital fund. These transfers are up to a maximum amount. So based on how things close out through the fiscal year, I may adjust these downward, but we will not go above the amount transferred here. So as the chairman indicated earlier on, we still are closing out some things, and moving into fiscal year 21, we still have some uncertainty as to how CARES Act funds are going to be distributed to us and they're going to be approved for. So these transfers, one on the technology side and one on the building capital side. The technology side will provide us an additional revenue source to draw down on for all the technology that we've purchased at the beginning of the year if the grants don't work out. And as far as the building capital side, we've had some significant repairs made to our HVAC systems at the beginning of the year, as well as some equipment that was brought in, particularly air purifiers, that we could possibly use these dollars for if the money through CARES Act doesn't come through. This will be sort of a secondary backup to that. Also, these transfers will back and refill the money that was spent during fiscal year 20.
Mr. Perrier, would you just mention for our viewing audience the amount of these transfers?
Absolutely. The building capital transfer is for $1.05 million, up to $1.05 million. And the technology transfer is for $1.65 million.
And again, these are caps. These are the maximum amounts that we're expecting.
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on these transfers? Dr. McGee, roll call. Oh,
Chairman-
well, I'll make a motion to discuss it. No, roll call, Dr. McGee, please.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the modifications to the reopening plan of Phase 2. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Burke. Do we need to, this is, for our legal counsel, the school committee should approve the modifications that were made to the reopening plan of Phase 2. Is there any discussion, any additional discussion on this modifications that we had made? If not, Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the COVID-19 policy for first passage. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Kepiscus and Mrs. Capwell. Is there any discussion on the policy? Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the virtual learning policy for first passage. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All of us.
Second by all the other members of the committee.
We have to time this better.
That was so well done. Oh, wow. Is there any additional discussion that we need on this policy? I don't hear any. Dr. McGee?
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
Next, I'll make a motion to discuss and approve the amendments to the technology acquisition policy for first passage. Is there a second? Someone.
Second.
Any additional discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yo,
Mr.
yeah,
Chair,
yes.
I do notice in the draft policy that we have in front of us, the main reason why we reviewed this was to change Mr. Notariani's title from Chief Technology Officer to
No.
Chief Operations Officer. Those changes were not made in the draft before you. So with that amendment, I'm going to ask that we agree that we vote on it as if it had been amended, because this draft is not amended. So when you see the word Chief Technology Officer, it's Chief Operations Officer, and I'll see to it that that's corrected by second passage.
Well, let's we
Oh, it's
can vote on
corrected
this.
in one place. It's corrected in two places, but not under upgrades on the first page.
So that's actually my fault. I'll fix it for the next meeting. Sorry.
I think that's funny.
Yeah.
With this small amendment, any other discussion? That do we demote Mr. Notoriani as he so chose? Dr. McGee, roll call.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kepiscus,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
And last item on our agenda is a discussion on the hiring process and placements of substitutes. Mrs. Kepiscus.
I raised this issue after hearing from a multitude of parents on social media with regard to why don't we have enough subs? People that told me that they were subs that applied and never heard back. Yet we're not opening the high school because we have insufficient staffing because we don't have enough subs. So as a result, I asked that this be put on the agenda just so that we could try to explain to those parents who are interested or guardians, families that are interested as to what's going on and where the problem comes in. So I leave that to whomever wants to address it, but parents just want further explanation. They don't understand. And when I was hearing from subs, people that said they were on the sub list that never got called in, I was wondering too what was going on. So if we could have some guidance, I'd appreciate it.
I turn it over to you, Dr. McGee and Dr. Holt. Take it away.
So in your packet, you have a packet, a process, for lack of a better word, from Mickey Dargan, who is our Director of Human Resources and Labor Relations. And this document or this packet goes through really the entire process of beginning with the onboarding procedures that we have for our substitutes in our district. It goes through the substitutes' rate of pay. It talks about the posting on School Spring, which is the primary method that we, or the platform, I should say, that we use. It describes the substitute interview form, and it goes all the way down through some sample substitute welcome letters that we have from each of our schools in the district. The process is very comprehensive. For substitute teachers, they have to have 60 college credits or higher, which is approximately two full years of college and or an associate's degree. The rate of pay that we provide our substitutes, anyone that subs from 1 to 45 days receives $100 a day. From 46 to 90 days, they receive $110 a day. 91 through 135 days, they receive $130, and anything beyond 136 days during the year, they would receive $231.47. Just as a reminder, the grant that we've applied for will add to each of these totals, per diem totals, moving forward. We also, our teacher assistants and our substitute paraprofessionals have to have a teacher assistant certification course and the praxis exam. The process by which we follow when somebody comes in and applies, whether they come in person or it's through word of mouth, they're forwarded to our human resources secretaries, who take their information, have them complete an application, and from there we have to ensure that, assuming that they have the qualifications, as I just mentioned a moment ago, they have to have the documentation completed. They have to have a BCI check before they can go in front of students in our district. We have at each of our schools, our administrators and their leadership teams are responsible for conducting the interviews with any substitute who is looking to work in our district, and then from there, that goes to the Human Resources Department, and they ensure that things like the BCI have been submitted before they can start. So there is quite a process that they have to follow. I'm not sure, Mickey, if there's anything you wanted to add to either the process or just any anecdotal information.
So please bear with me. I'm having some issues with my speech, but I wanted to address Ms. Kapiskis's concerns in regards to subs who signed up last year. In August, when we knew we were returning with surety, we issued reasonable assurance letters to 126 substitutes, as required by the Department of Labor and Training. We also invited teaching partners and study pals who were paid through a grant, and which was later reduced, also a position as a day-to-day substitute. In order to return, they had to complete the form and send it back to us. We mailed them, but we also sent it through the web email. We only received 59 responses. We did call.
If I could add to that, so I think that's a great example of the fact that we've been reaching out to substitutes. First, we've been reaching out to substitutes that have been with us last year and in previous years, and unfortunately, not in all cases are they willing to return. I know that specifically to some of the positions that we have been interviewing for this year, substitute positions. I know that in my conversations with Mickey and the HR department, although they initially came in to interview with the leadership team from the high school, when they move on beyond that, there have been instances in cases where the pay is just not, believe it or not enough, which is kind of hard to believe because we're pretty competitive with other districts. And, I'm sure once we receive the grant that we've applied for, we're going to be, above and beyond other districts in terms of their substitute pay. So there are a lot of issues, and there are a lot of, types of things that are involved in having somebody come to the district to sub. The other thing that's critical is, we have some specific courses, especially at our high school, where, for example, biotech, those are very, very specific, certifications, and that's really specific experience that we're looking for somebody to come in and to, substitute short-term or in this case, this year, long-term in those positions. You're not going to, you're not going to want to just bring anyone's, off the street who, although they may have the number of credits, they may not have the the expertise or the ability to teach a course like that. So that makes it challenging for us as well. But I've got to say, over the last year, since Mickey has been here in Woonsocket, she and her department have done a phenomenal job in really overhauling the onboarding process. And when I say the onboarding process, it starts with, somebody coming in and submitting an application. That's where it starts, right through, hopefully the point where we hire them, where we offer them the position, and the school committee, approves their appointment. So I really have to commend Mickey and the HR department for just the amazing job that she has done and they have done in really, creating a process that I believe works really well for us. You're always going to get those instances where somebody, calls or sends an email and has an issue. Those are unavoidable, but I can tell you that in the instances where people may say that, well, they weren't provided a return call or something, I can tell you that I know from the conversations I've had with Mickey and the others in the HR department that they really do a very thorough job of vetting substitutes and trying to lure them, if you will, to the district. So I think it's she's done a really terrific job, and we're in a much better place with respect to onboarding and retaining staff than we've ever been.
I agree. Mickey's done an excellent job, but the concern still remains that there are some folks out there who have called me, texted me, emailed me. I keep sending them to the district main number. They're still not getting a response, and that's occurring. Is there on our website, is it clear that we have a number that if someone wants to substitute, it's there?
Mr. Bourget, I'm better in the chat because my faculties are here. I put my email, which is for everybody in the HR department. We all get it. And I see them too, and I follow up with everybody who goes and emails there. That's the quickest way, but they can always call McPhee directly. And we have been contacting everybody. I did put in there that people have come in and inquired, but not necessarily followed through on their end, despite our quite pesky calls to them. With that said, email is always preferred because I personally track them. Same for current subs who feel they're not being called. I would love to look into that and find out why, because we have a lot of opportunities.
Are we at a point, or have we put a notice in the Valley Breeze and in the Woonsocket Call? It's something to consider, and because these are our local papers.
Yes, I spoke actually with Miss Morel previously on several newspapers to post in. I was waiting for the grant from RIDE so I could really target that enhanced funding. As we all know, posting in the newspapers is quite costly, more than most people I think can realize. So once we know, which we should know by tomorrow, I am happy to post in the 4 newspapers Miss Morel suggested.
Okay, that sounds good. I think the cost, the benefit will definitely outweigh the cost here. Because right now, if we can get the number of subs that we need, then we can open the high school. And frankly, that should be the main goal. I mean, we've spent a ton of money to get the high school ready, and it's just sitting there with except for our special ed kids. So it'd be great to have them in. So we need to keep outreaching. And we're doing it, but we'll see what we can do. I don't think the city council has. I mean, we have not the city council. I don't believe. That's something I can do, is to reach out to President Gendron and let him know that maybe he should include that on his agenda, at least as a discussion item, so that, because that's televised, that we're looking for, folks to call our district and seek the position of substitute. Because it's one, and like you said, Nikki, there are people who are going to say, yeah, I'm very interested, but they don't follow through. Or it's just a whimsical notion just to make them feel good that they've asked that, gee, let me inquire, but there's nothing that comes of it. But
I do not believe the majority do this. However, in order to obtain weekly unemployment benefits, they need to apply for several jobs a week. And so we often see overqualified individuals doing that, but we still chase them.
Okay, fine. Anything else? Any other items for Mrs. Kapiski, please?
I just wanted to thank Mickey for providing us the information. What I was really looking for was that information that you provided in the chat, that we did reach out to the subs who had previously listed with the district. And it looks like maybe half of them responded, and even less than half of them actually agreed to come back. And that's what puts us in this problem. And you can say all you want that you're a sub in the district, but if you didn't respond to that request, you can't expect to be called in, and you can't complain that we don't have enough subs to open up the high school. And that's what I wanted to focus on. I wanted to make sure that people would understand this was not WED sitting on their hands and doing nothing. Ms. Dargon and her crew have been working very hard to fill those positions.
Right.
But there's a lack of willingness of people to fill those positions. Even people who previously worked for the district are unwilling to come back, and that may be COVID related, it may be population related, I don't know.
It could be dollar related, they're shopping the districts.
Absolutely, and if you're shopping the districts, you're going to go to the ones that pay you more. You're going to do the same amount of work sitting in front of that classroom, a lot of times just virtually supervising, virtual instruction. It's not the hardest work in the world, but if you can get paid $18 an hour to do it, why would you get paid $16 an hour to do it here? Thank you. I appreciate that information, Ms. Dargon.
Yeah, thanks, Mickey.
Well said.
Well done. Is there any other comments? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 8:18. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Vice Chair Burke. Dr. McGee, roll call, please.
Chairman Bourget,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burke,
Yes.
Mrs. Kapiskas,
Yes.
Mrs. Capwell.
Yes.
And we are adjourned.